Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Harmon, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for the Planning Council Learning Collaborative final webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to review some housekeeping items. First of all, since we have a high number of participants on this call, all participant lines will be muted. If you have any comments or questions, please submit them at any time by using the Q&A feature. To open your Q&A window, please click on the Q&A icon located at the bottom center of your Zoom window. Closed caption is also available. You can view the captions in your browser by clicking the AI Media link in the chat, or depending on your screen size, you can go to the ellipse at the bottom of the screen below More to show captions and change their size. Or use the caret beside the closed caption notation at the bottom of your screen. And please know there are two links, one in English and one in Spanish. If you experience any technical issues during this webinar, please message us using the chat feature, which is located at the bottom center of your screen, or email us at samsastateta@jbsinternational.com. I'm going to repeat that. samsastateta@jbsinternational.com. Lastly, this is a recorded event and your participation grants consent to be recorded. The recorded webinar and PowerPoint slides will be available and sent to all participants at a later date. Next slide. I would like to note that material in today's presentation do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions and policies of SAMHSA. Next slide. As you continue to join today, please take a minute to say hello by telling us your name and any information you would like to share in the chat. Next slide. I'm going to just briefly provide our plan for our time together today. And I will say we are on Plan B right now. In a moment, we had planned to have a welcome from SAMHSA. That may occur. However, we may need to do that a little bit later in the presentation. We will hear a little bit of information about the Learning Collaborative experience. Then we will hear each of the 8 states that participated in our Learning Collaborative share their experiences and lessons they have learned. While they are presenting, be sure to note any questions or comments because we will have a time to ask these questions, and we hope to hear about your experiences with planning councils in your own state. Then we'll end with a few closing comments and ask for your feedback about this webinar. Okay. I think now we will move on to the next slide.
Hi, Kathy. Sorry to interrupt. Unfortunately, Dr. Everett will not be able to join us this afternoon, but we do have Doug Slotauber, who's branch chief with SAMHSA, who's provided just exuberant leadership for the Learning Collaborative. So with that said, Doug, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, thank you both, Kathy and Matt. Very glad to be here today. So I want to start by saying a welcome to all the states and territories in attendance for today's Planning Council's webinar presented by SAMHSA in partnership with JBS International. I really want to thank all the state planners and planning council chairs that participated in this learning collaborative. You know, your work was really essential in this process, and we want to acknowledge all the time and investment that went into it and that made it a success. There were many states that applied to be part of this learning collaborative back in May. You know, unfortunately, due to space limits, we had to narrow it down to 8 states. But we hope to provide more opportunities in the future. This is a multi-year contract, and we'll be doing additional learning collaboratives each year. So today's webinar is the culmination of an intensive multi-session learning collaborative that the following states participated in: Arizona, Delaware, Iowa, Michigan, Mississippi, Oregon, Texas, and West Virginia. The first session was conducted in June, with the final session ending in August. Each session included national subject matter experts who presented key strategies and best practices. Breakout discussions were for participant interaction and sharing, and activities built on strengthening the planning councils of state participants. The purpose of today's webinar is to ensure that the work, lessons learned, and key findings from the collaboratives are shared with a broader audience, all of you. So today's presentation includes several state participants sharing their takeaways via state spotlights. As the spotlights are shared, I encourage everyone to consider the ways these lessons learned could be applied to the implementation of similar strategies in your state. If anyone wants to reach out to speak with one of the states being featured today to learn more about their experience, you can be contacted through that can be facilitated through JBS. At SAMHSA State TA at jbsinternational.com. And that email address will be shared again at the conclusion of this webinar as well. And they'd be happy to help facilitate that connection. Now, also, as a companion to this webinar, SAMHSA and JBS are developing a brief document to summarize the common themes and lessons learned by the participants. This should be released in just a few weeks and will be sent to all of the state mental health agency commissioners, mental health block grant planners, and planning council chairs. Future learning collaboratives will be held as part of the Center for Mental Health Services state TA contract. This contract is funded by SAMHSA to support states in their use of the mental health services block grant, including implementation of set-aside activities and dissemination of evidence-based practices. States interested in applying should be on the lookout in the coming year for further instructions from their GPO as well as JBS. Any questions can be directed to your government project officer. SAMHSA is committed to supporting our partners in the states and jurisdictions as they strive to meet the behavioral health needs of their communities. The state TA learning collaboratives are one way that states can take advantage of this support. You can also request individualized TA on and off site directly from JBS, which, as I said, Matt will tell you more about later on in this webinar. And you can always reach out to your government project officer with questions. So before I turn it back to the facilitator to get us started, I just want to thank those in attendance today. SAMHSA really appreciates your commitment to improving your systems, and we thank you for your work. Special thanks to the participants in the Learning Collaborative, without which this would not have been possible. Your support for each other and your willingness to share the lessons learned with all of us today. So that said, thank you all very much. And Kathy, back to you.
Thank you, Doug, on behalf of Dr. Everett. Okay. The Learning Collaborate had 3 main goals. The first was to reinforce the fundamentals of the primary duties of the planning councils. Second, to highlight both the challenges and the potential solutions across states. And lastly, to share and learn about best practices for strengthening planning councils and to learn these from one another. Next. The journey leading us to today, to this very webinar, began with the Planning Council listening sessions that SAMHSA held on April 18th and 19th of 2023. The purpose of the listening sessions was to assess the technical assistant needs of planning councils and to develop a list of those needs. More than 40 states and territories participated in these small group breakouts. 4 needs from the list that was created through the listening sessions became the focus for the Planning Council Learning Collaborative sessions. Next slide. Following the listening session, SAMHSA sent invitations to all states and territories to assess interest in participating in the Planning Council Collaborative. In May 2023, SAMHSA selected 8 states to participate: Arizona, Delaware, Iowa, Michigan, Mississippi, Oregon, Texas, and West Virginia. Each state had 1 participant from the Planning Council and 1 state professional staff member, for a total of 16 participants from the 8 states. Next slide. Everyone teaches, everyone learns. This was the guiding principle of the Planning Council Learning Collaborative. It guided every aspect, every component of the Learning Collaborative. Every person has a valuable story to share. Every person can teach. Next slide. A key component of the Learning Collaborative was that participants prepared a SWOT analysis for each session's topic in advance of the session. For example, for the topic member recruitment, each state developed an objective, such as increase the number of members with lived experience on our Planning Council from 2 to 6. Then the state listed the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats related to the objective. The participants brought these SWOTs to the session each week and in small groups, and the other participants provided feedback. Next slide. Each of the 4 Learning Collaborative sessions lasted 2 hours. We invited guest speakers to speak on each topic, followed by small group breakout groups where participants shared their respective state SWOT analysis and received feedback and reflections from the other small group members. After these small group discussions, the full Learning Collaborative group met to share key takeaways, such as what were the common challenges across state? What are possible solutions and best practices? And finally, does anyone have a story to tell? A story about our specific topic for that day. Next slide. Our Learning Collaborative featured 4 speakers who graciously shared their experiences and their wisdom. John Hudgens is a senior program manager for Advocates for Human Potential Center for Technical Assistance and Training. John has specific experience in federal grant writing and reviewing, in behavioral health block grant planning, and in coaching both mental and behavioral health planning councils. John's presentation addressed Planning Council's member recruitment, onboarding, and retention. Rosie Anderson Harper serves as the Director of Recovery Services for the Missouri Department of Mental Health, Division of Behavioral Health. As Director of Recovery Services, Rosie supervises housing, employment services, recovery support services, consumer-operated service programs, peer support and family support services, and She works with the Behavioral Health Advisory Council. Rosie shared her insights regarding collaboration for mental health block grant planning between the state and the council. Ryan Stakoviak works for the Bureau of Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. In his current role, he leads a team of block grant planners, council support staff, data and evaluation specialists, and contract specialists supporting the implementation of community-based behavioral health services for the state of Wisconsin. Ryan's presentation addressed the development of planning council committees and subcommittees. Stephen Buck is President and Chief Executive Officer of Care Providers Oklahoma. He also served as Executive Director of the Oklahoma Office of Juvenile Affairs. Steve also worked for the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services as a Deputy Commissioner and also as Secretary of Human Services and Early Childhood Initiatives. Steve's presentation focused on advocacy activities. Next slide. Beginning with the first Learning Collaborative meeting in June, some general lessons began to emerge. These lessons were strengthened as our collaborative activities progressed. Some of these general lessons included the following. Planning councils need specific membership recruitment, orientation, and retention plans. Also, the timing, setting, and frequency of planning council meetings really does matter. Ongoing year-round communication between the planning council and state staff is critical and should not be limited to just meeting in the summer to complete reports. But the more the council and the state communicate throughout the year, the easier those reports are, because people are informed every step of the way about the services that are ongoing and being developed in the state. We also discovered that active committees and subcommittees can help clarify and organize the work of the Planning Council. And a clear understanding of the opportunities and the parameters of advocacy activities is vital to the work of the Planning Council. And last but most certainly not least, because of the hard work that every person does on the Planning Council, the state, it is important for us to know that we are not alone. Resources are available for education, for new member orientation, for many, many things. States and planning councils can communicate and share resources with each other. We've discovered that very early on, when even after the first meeting, states were exchanging phone numbers and information so that they could continue conversations outside of our meetings. And finally, technical assistance is available through SAMHSA State Technical Assistance Project. And we're going to talk more about that at the end of this presentation. Slide 15. Not only did we learn some general teachings discoveries, but we also learned some lessons and best practices. As we continue to study and listen and discuss and share stories, specific lessons and best practices sprung forth from our guest speakers and from all the participants in the Learning Collaborative. Here are some examples. West Virginia utilizes a leadership academy for persons with lived experiences that prepares them for leadership and advocacy activities. Missouri has state staff open every planning council meeting with updates, and they give special presentations regarding new initiatives and funding opportunities at every meeting. Wisconsin has committees and subcommittees that are reviewed and appointed annually based on the current need, and there are regular reports to the full Planning Council. Texas utilizes ad hoc subcommittees to research and address challenges and service gaps as they are identified throughout the year. And Oklahoma suggested a wide range of forums to strengthen advocacy, such as having an advocacy committee, having advocacy training, developing white papers, making formal recommendations beyond the block grant, having social media strategies, and partnering with other advocacy groups. These are some of the lessons and best practices that we learned. And now we are going to hear from the participants of the Learning Collaborative. Next slide. First, we are going to hear from our colleagues from Arizona and West Virginia, starting with Vicki Johnson and Vanessa Van Gilder. I turn it over to you, ladies.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Vicki Johnson. I'm the chairperson of the Arizona Behavioral Health Planning Council. My partner from Arizona, who also participated in the Learning Collaborative, is the wonderful Andrea Lesfield. She's the Mental Health Block Grant Administrator for Arizona. I'm here to tell you a little bit about something that we will take away from our participation in the Learning Collaborative. First, let me tell you a little bit about our council. As the slide says, we were formed in 1986. Although our mandating language does not reference substance use disorder, Arizona services have always been integrated between substance abuse disorder services and behavioral health services. So we have treated our work that way as well. We have 24 members on our council. We recently changed our bylaws to increase our maximum membership from 30 to 40. That's because we have kind of a puny committee set up, and we want more committees, and we want to do more committee work. We believe we need more members in order to do that. Next slide. A little background about what we want to do. Arizona is one of the fastest growing and most diverse states in the nation, and we have growth projected way above the national average. Arizona is also home to 22 federally recognized Native nations, each with their own history, culture, and specific behavioral health needs. To ensure behavioral health legislation, policies, and services reflect everyone's most current identified needs, our council membership needs to be equally diverse. The council already identifies diversity gaps, and we need to develop a more formal recruitment strategy to address our diversity needs. Our current council members are often engaged in meetings, trainings, conferences that can help us with this issue. They can actively provide information about or recruit members, and through their contacts, they can help us address our council composition plan. For example, Andrea is the mental health block grant administrator, and in that role, she has regular meetings with tribal authorities, at least about monthly. And that's an opportunity for her to engage those representatives, to tell them about the planning council and get them interested in having representation on the council. And that's something we're hoping for. It's our hope that with increased diversity and increased size, our council will be able to be strengthened. We'll have more robust composition. This will lead more relevant work and advocacy, both in the council as a whole and as well as within the committees we hope to get going. Related to this objective of increasing and diversifying our council composition is the way we add members to the council. Our council currently receives applicants to the council for council membership throughout the year. And so their candidates for membership on the council are reviewed one at a time. And when they are elected to the council, they're given a handbook and a brief orientation by an individual council member. Through the Learning Collaborative, we learned that some other states structure the process for adding council members to occur at an appointed time. That means that new council members would be added as a group. This process then includes formal training of new members and a more structured mentoring process for these new members. We would like to consider this as a possible change and hopefully to strengthen our onboarding process. So thank you for this and other good ideas we gained from our participation in the collaborative, and thank you for this opportunity to tell you about it.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa Van Gilder, and my awesome co-participant is Rebecca Roth, who is the Director of Policy Planning and Research for the Bureau for Behavioral Health at West Virginia's Department of Health and Human Services. The West Virginia Behavioral Health Planning Council was actually created in 1993 as the West Virginia Mental Health Planning Council and was integrated to the Behavioral Health Planning Council in 2013. We have 35 members on our council. Next slide, please. So one objective to focus. I am a newly elected chairperson of the Behavioral Health Planning Council, but I have been a member of the council since around 2011. And one objective of focus was to learn about how other states were balancing the involvement of both new and experienced members. It's been a struggle for us to fill some of our seats, such as youth. We also want to have younger people join to help teach them leadership skills so they can become leaders in our state. We were also interested in learning from states who have term limits, since our council does not. We wanted to learn about diversity in other councils and how they recruit various populations, such as youth, veterans, reentry population, and other backgrounds. West Virginia as a state does not have a very diverse population because we have about 93% of our residents being white, according to the U.S. Census. Little less than 4% of our population is Black, and a little less than 1% is Asian. We also have to work hard to have equitable geographic representation from our 55 counties. Y'all probably know that West Virginia is kind of strangely shaped with a northern panhandle and an eastern panhandle. Most of our council meetings are held in Charleston, which is our state capital, and it's a 3-hour drive from the northern panhandle and a 4.5-hour drive from the eastern panhandle. The ability to have meetings by Zoom has helped with our members' attendance, although our council does reimburse our members for travel. We also found out there are different issues in different parts of the state, so we do want to make sure that we have representation from all areas. So one measurable step. Led by the executive committee, the council is planning to ask all members of the council to review the council's orientation manual, which was written in 2017. I've started looking at it. There are several links that may be outdated, and we are also considering having a new member orientation. Our West Virginia Statewide Independent Living Council does a half-day event for their new members, and it shares a lot of background and what a member's responsibilities are. And I think doing something like this would be invaluable to our new members to help with their understanding of the history and the purpose of the council, and then what their responsibilities are as a member of the council. We also want to connect our Leadership Academy training to members of the council. Our academy is a peer facilitated training program, and it's held regionally several times a year. Our participants are provided with a manual, supplies, and meals, and have the opportunity to work with others and practice skills to become more effective and motivating speaker, presenter, and organized leader. Once a person graduates from the Leadership Academy, we support them with regular conference calls, emails, social media resources, and webinar refreshers. Those that are interested have an opportunity to become a facilitator for the Leadership Academy. One takeaway to share. I really enjoyed hearing from all the other states working through their process for orientation and training, and also their activities for reviewing the block grant through the year. I was intrigued by the other states who have regular meetings throughout the year about the block grant, and we don't have that. We do have a systems and monitoring committee who is tasked with that, but several states talked about having a time in their council meetings to talk about the block grant at every one of their council meetings. So that's something I would like to explore. I just want to add that this collaborative has been amazing, and I've enjoyed meeting and learning from those from other states. The facilitators have gone above and beyond to make this a successful endeavor, and I'm happy that West Virginia was selected to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder for those who might be curious and asking questions, all participants on today's webinar will be receiving copies of the slides. They'll be sent to you. And now we're going to hear about committees and subcommittees from Jolene Rasmussen and Malkia Newman.
Good afternoon. This is Jolene Rasmussen, and my co-partner in the Learning Collaborative was Adriana Flores, who was from the state side, and I'm actually the chair of the Behavioral Health Advisory Committee. So we were created in 2000, and it is integrated, meaning we address both mental health and substance use within the committee. It's an advisory committee to the agency, and one of our charges is related to the Planning Council. We have 19 members and include 6 state agencies in the work that we do. Next slide. So this is more of the meat of the presentation. So our objective, and this was common, I think, among some of the other states too, was really to increase the member participation on the committees and the subcommittees. And what we determined is that really for this, we have clear requirements that everybody on the advisory committee does need to participate on a subcommittee. But the level of participation hasn't been to the point where we could really optimize the expertise of the members that we had. So what we were trying to do is think about at what point could we better inform members as they came on to the committee. So we kind of identified that one step, our proposed plan is to really provide more detailed information regarding what does it mean to participate on the committee? What are the expectations? And to do this when people are applying, when they've been accepted, they confirm their acceptance, and also during the new member orientation. So this is really to understand that, you know, what subcommittee you're going to participate on, how frequently do they meet, what is that kind of hour commitment, how frequently does the full committee meet. And then in the interim, there is a lot of information that is shared. So this could be initiatives that would affect mental health or substance use services, any of the components, the focus of the committee. And so it requires reading reports or communicating back in email. So I think clearing and really laying out what those expectations are will increase that participation. So for us, some of the key takeaways and from other states and for us was really understanding that flexibility is key. And so currently we have 3 subcommittees. We have an access and community engagement subcommittee. We have a child and youth subcommittee, and we have a peer and family partners subcommittee. The number of committees was dictated a little bit to ensure that we have adequate participation on the subcommittees without achieving quorum, since we are subject to Open Meetings Act. The frequency does vary among the subcommittees. So for instance, our child and youth subcommittee only meets quarterly, while the community access and engagement and our peer and family partners subcommittees meet monthly. And those meetings are approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours. But we do always discuss when we have new members what the dates of the meetings would be, what the times, if we need to make any adjustments to accommodate people's schedules, again, to maximize their participation. I think another aspect of the committees and subcommittees is just to understand that behavioral health nationwide, I feel like the environment changes, and with that changing environment, there's different challenges, there's different barriers. And so we wanted to ensure that our subcommittees were really meeting and addressing this. So just because we had a subcommittee in the past doesn't mean that that continues forever. We want to ensure that our committee members, where their passions are, where their interests are, that we're able to really maximize their expertise to the kind of knowledge base and the information and the recommendations that we in turn provide to the agency. So for instance, we had a subcommittee that was focused on housing, but they were able to complete and meet their objectives. And just understanding some of the dynamics nationally and even some new initiatives within Texas, we thought that housing was really one of the social determinants or drivers of health, but we know that there's so many others. So whether it's your utilities and whether it's transportation, any of these other kinds of, your health related social needs, we wanted to be able to address that. So we actually dissolved the housing subcommittee and have now a focus on these social drivers of health in all of the subcommittees. We find that much of our work is not siloed in one area. So we want to ensure that if there is the statewide focus, that all subcommittees can incorporate that into their work. So again, really our experience is just to allow for this flexibility, to understand. It was mentioned that we had the capacity for ad hoc, meetings, and it could be something really important comes up, but it's not a focus of a standing subcommittee. So how can we address that through an ad hoc subcommittee, through an ad hoc work group, to be able to address a specific need, provide the appropriate feedback to the state agency without kind of changing the cadence of our meetings. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Malkia Newman, and my co-participant in this learning collaborative is Daryl Harden. We're both newbies. I'm a new council chair, and I'm also, and Daryl's also new in his capacity with the department that oversees the planning council. While the full story of Michigan's Behavioral Health Council dates back well before 2013, we are now 10 years into our council in its current form, a unified mental health and substance use disorder advisory council. We currently have 32 members, though we are still recruiting to ensure we have a broad array of representation. What was our next slide? What was our objective? What did we hope to change? As we explore how to improve the partnership between the Behavioral Health Advisory Council and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, we are looking at the potential benefits of using subcommittees to help keep the Advisory Council better informed and aware of key issues and emerging trends. During the Learning Collaborative, we heard from other states about how they are using subcommittees to support their planning councils, and we think that we can enjoy similar success in Michigan. What is one measurable step that we looked at or plan to take to meet this objective? Anything worth doing is worth planning for, especially when you're literally designed to be a planning council. So a reasonable next step for Michigan is to identify our members as a list of areas and topics where subcommittees could be effective. A few potential ideas come to mind: funding, children's behavioral health, and policy and advocacy. Looking past this, once we identify which subcommittees might make sense, we can start activities like identifying which topics may be the best to move forward with, and thinking about things like composition, staff support needs, and meeting frequency. With the MDHHS team having a fairly small staff, and the BHAC and MDHHS need to discuss how to effectively organize and support the meetings and what roles should be covered by BHAC and MDHHS staff. What is the one takeaway you would like to share with other states? There are a lot of potential benefits from initiating the use of subcommittees. The BHAC is obligated to advocate for improvements to the behavioral health system. It's impossible for us to do that work without proper education, training, and awareness. One of our members provides us legislative updates, but there's more than that that can be done. And we're working with the department to ensure that we're able to do that. Additionally, more engaging and enriching work makes the BHAC more attractive and supports both recruitment and retention. What we can't lose in all of this is that an increase in meetings means more content, but it also means more work. Both the BHAC and the department will need to come together to ensure that the new meetings are properly supported to be successful. The department staff will need to determine how to ensure the right resources to get to the meetings, and the BHAC members will need to help pull meetings together and support topic development. Working together, though, we'll be able to accomplish our objective and achieve meaningful improvement. Thank you.
Coming to us from Oregon, we will hear from Michelle Brandsma, and from Mississippi, August Irving, and they will be talking to us about building collaborative relationships.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Michelle Brandsma, and I am from Oregon. And it's really interesting, the collaborative relationships that we're working to build right now. We've gone through quite the transition with our committee, and we're bringing on several new members. Our creation was 2011, so we're a fairly new committee in Oregon. Oh, and before I go further, I need to also say that Amy Ashton Williams from the Oregon Health Authority was my co-partner on this. And my role is a provider. I work from the provider's point of view. We've been integrated from the very beginning between behavioral health and substance use disorders. And we, at the time that we made up the slides, we had 25 members. However, we currently have 33. So we've done quite an increase in that. We can go to the next slide. So the one objective of focus was to improve the collaboration, the collaborative relationships between our committee and the state of Oregon. Like I said, we've gone through quite a few changes recently. And one of the things that we started doing differently is because it's such a huge contract that the committee is responsible for. We've actually broken it up into various training opportunities, informational settings, and that for people to be able, for the committee members to be able to get a really good foundation and a hold on just exactly what the grant is and what their responsibilities of a committee member are as a committee member, and really working hard to get the voice of the Oregonians into the work that we do. So we have a great deal of people who have experienced behavioral health issues, whether it be themselves or their family members, or that, as well as the substance use disorders. The one measurable step that we pointed to was we started sharing this information with each other. We've really dived in with the help of OHA and that on really making sure that we have a diverse, fresh perspective in the committee. So we have a very, like I said, diverse, and we really do go for, we have all ages and all different types of services that are representative, as well as various family members and that have been touched by the behavioral health and substance use disorders. The one takeaway that we'd like to share is that building relationships takes time. Our committee was kind of in a disarray. COVID didn't help it. And then there was a lot of transition within Oregon Health Authority itself. A lot of the behavioral health and substance use providers in Oregon have not returned even after COVID. So that's kind of created a barrier for us as well that we've had to work through. And really getting to the point where we can value and everybody's voice, and really listening to what Oregonians are saying is the need for the changes in Oregon. And I think that's it.
August, you ready to go?
I am. Hello, I am
Hello.
Irving, and I am the state planner for the state of Mississippi. And I participated in the Learning Collaborative along with my colleague, Tiffany Tyne, who is our peer specialist. And she's also a recovery coach, and she's now serving as the co-chair of our council. And since Tiffany was unable to join us today, I am going to present on her behalf. Prior to this year, there were two different planning councils here in Mississippi, And during COVID, the state decided to make it into one planning council, which was great. So it was during 2022, we started to integrate our council. And now we have 38 members. And we are working on increasing those numbers. So you can change. Okay. As I mentioned on the previous slide, prior to this year, there were 2 different planning councils and both were run by the state. In addition to creating an integrated council in 2022, at the same time, the state was beginning to shift, changing the council leadership from the Department of Mental Health to a non-department members of the council. These multiple changes, it was really important to us to make sure that everybody on the council was knowledgeable about the grant, especially since there were so many newcomers. We felt that it was really helpful to maintain our momentum and for us to make sure that everyone on the council was going to know what was going on, especially about the block grant. So we have been doing a lot of different trainings about that. This year we had a lot of participation about the block grant. So that was really exciting. One measurable step, we identify resources and information that can be shared with the newcomers, and that's one thing we did. Through the Learning Collaborative, we found out that some states have materials that they provide with newcomers. We have started looking at these materials to see what would make sense to use in our state. We believe that one way to make sure that we maintain good relationships during this time of transition is for everyone to be on the same page. When Tiffany was preparing these slides, she said that non-DMH members have seen that DMH is really knowledgeable about many aspects of the Planning Council, but also has helped to guide without controlling the council activities. Tiffany wrote this: with the first meeting, DMH really held our hands and guided us in the process. From there, we started leading the meetings, but have continued to be available to us for whatever we needed. We were not afraid that we would be left hanging. So the council has taken the reins, and that has been really exciting to watch them bloom as they have taken the reins with leading the council. One takeaway to share, Tiffany wanted to share that in addition to learning to draw on resources and ideas from other states, it also, in other states, to also be open-minded about changes in the council that your state may undergo, and also to lean on the resources and expertise of the state staff. And thank you.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Teresa Baumhoff and Jody Patterson are going to share their ideas about advocacy.
All right, well, hello, my name is Teresa Baumhoff. I am the chair of the Iowa Mental Health Planning and Advisory Council. My co-participant from Iowa Health and Human Services is Wendy DePhillips. The council was created in 1992. We originated as a mental health council and are currently working on a strategic plan to integrate. Our bylaws allow for 33 members. of which we currently have 28 individuals apply and are chosen by current council members. While there are 7 state agencies represented on the council through nomination, no members are appointed by the state. We are excited to report we have 2 additional applications the council will be considering at our September meeting later this week. If both are approved, it would bring our total to 30 members. Next slide, please. Advocacy was one of the topics we discussed during the Learning Collaborative sessions. It is one of the areas we hope to strengthen on the Iowa Mental Health Planning and Advisory Council. Iowa is in a state of change. We are in the process of state realignment, where 37 state agencies will be reduced to 16. It has become clear council members need to feel empowered and well-informed, not only during this realignment process, but in other advocacy activities as well. So Iowa's advocacy objective of focus is to introduce quarterly education regarding advocacy opportunities in the state. Quarterly education would include presentations from different program leaders at the state and community level, as well as other subject matter experts. Presentations from other advocacy groups and providers can assist members in recognizing concerning issues. Collaboration with allies on similar concerns can strengthen the council's message and help create systemic change. One measurable step that we plan to take to meet this objective is to add an agenda item to future council meetings, which will be led by a mix of state staff and experienced advocates on the council. These educational sessions will help to inform all members of current advocacy opportunities with both within the state and federally, as well as contribute to their general knowledge of the evolving state behavioral health system. The takeaway we would like to share with other states based on what we have learned through our participation in this collaborative is related to advocacy and the importance of keeping running documentation of current programs, pilots, grants, initiatives, and reports. This information is gathered through committee feedback, updates, and presentations at council meetings, media articles of interest, as well as information and reports from other boards, commissions, and advocacy groups. This document is updated bi-monthly by council leadership and support staff because we meet bi-monthly. It is shared with members in advance of every regular meeting. This allows council members the opportunity to review the document prior to the meeting to encourage discussion and pinpoint any necessary changes. Due to the current reorganization of state government in Iowa, it is more imperative than ever that members are well informed. This running documentation acts as an important reference tool and memory device. It can be used by all council members to assist them in making advocacy decisions, as well as increasing their overall knowledge of the changing state behavioral health system. Thank you. And I turn it over to Delaware.
Hi, my name is Joni Patterson, and I'm the project director on our CCBHC planning grant. We have a subcommittee through our Behavioral Health Planning and Advisory Council, and my partner I participated with was Amy Erb. She is our planner for our Community Mental Health Block Grant and our Substance Abuse Block Grant. Delaware's Behavioral Health Planning Advisory Council was created originally in 1984 as a mental health planning council. In 2001, it established as the advisory council to the Delaware Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. And not until 2020 did this council officially become integrated with a focus on both mental health and substance abuse. Next slide, please. So one objective of focus is that we hope to support members in using their voices in ways that can be heard and help support effective change. We want to not only encourage them to use their voices, but to also make actionable and effective goals that support substantial impact within their communities. We hope individuals begin to feel supported, feel heard, and are hopeful that sharing their feelings and their experiences with others, that they can then come and inspire them to become involved in our councils. One measurable step that we take and we plan to take is that here in Delaware, we're exploring national models to create an educational experience for our members. This way they can learn how to participate in councils and advocacy groups, hopefully create member buy-in on specific issues to goals established by these groups, and to understand their role in advocating and making legislative changes. We see this education experience also as a way to build capacity and engagement within our community members. Once again, as individuals and families of individuals with lived experience become more involved in coalitions and councils, we're hopeful the experience is a positive one and that they share their experience in these councils, which then result with their friends and family members also becoming engaged in their communities. We hope that with this engagement, there are more people with more diverse backgrounds and lived experience to become involved, especially through ages across the lifespan. One takeaway is that we learn that reevaluating existing tools is critical in the development and growth of a planning council. New members need support to become heard voices and require understanding of how their roles will impact change. Delaware can support this by providing updated information regarding outcomes and initiatives. So we really hope that our community members can become more inspired to become involved in our councils, but not only share their voice, but know how to share their voice in an effective way that can be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the question and answer segment of the presentation. If you have not already done so, please submit your questions by using the Q&A feature located at the bottom center of your screen. Okay, and participants of the collaborative, this is be your time. If you have any responses to the questions we'll be sharing, feel free. Okay. Here is a question from Diane. When you say you are integrated, does that mean the state submits a combined application for mental health and substance use also? I see Daryl's hand up.
Hi there. Diane, speaking for Michigan, I can say yes, that absolutely does mean that we have an integrated council as well as a combined application. I don't know how long Michigan has been doing the combined application. I continue to live in a fantasy world in which we'll get the substance use standalone application deadline for the combined application, but that's still Daryl living in fantasy world. But we do integrate those together here in Michigan because we want to reflect, that we have integrated our planning. There are sister section here in our bureau. And so we want to integrate that we do that planning work together and try to keep the application together as well to highlight the importance of coordinating that work here in Michigan.
Thank you, Daryl. Andrea.
I can branch off a little bit what Daryl said. In Arizona, we also have always had an integrated team or an integrated council. However, when you submit the application, the Behavioral Health Planning Council is only mandated for MHBG. It's not mandated for SUBG. So even if you submitted a combined application, you don't necessarily have to include substance use. But it's just best practice and in our opinion to do that. But that's what our integrated team means as far as that piece of the council is concerned.
Thank you. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Thank you for your questions. This is from Timothy. I am chair of the Committee of Maryland's BHAC, the Planning Council. I worked for 17 years and retired as deputy in 2002. While plans are very important, my experience is that many important decisions result from issues that arise on a crisis basis that are not related to the plan. Let's see. I am trying to work to get information on such decisions to the council and wonder whether any other councils are what you're doing. So he's wanting to know, I feel that councils really need to be aware of such decisions at a minimum. So many important decisions result from a crisis, but how is that information transferred over to the council? Someone want to respond to that? Jolene?
Sure. This is kind of what we were talking about. Many topics will come up and it may be classified as a crisis or it may be just time sensitive. And so we will usually send out a message to the entire committee. But since our subcommittees do meet on a more regular basis, they may take up that topic, or as we mentioned, we can bring together quickly an ad hoc meeting to address whatever issue at hand and to determine the best results. And one of the things that we use our subcommittees for is to provide that more immediate feedback to the state agency. So if there was something that really needed, we felt needed our input, or whether it was formal feedback that's posted to the agency or informal in a conversation, we would be able to do that in our subcommittees.
Thank you. Are there other people that want to speak to this issue? I see hands continue to stay up after people have spoken. Andrea, were you wanting to speak to this, or is your hand up from the past question?
From the past question, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Does anyone else want to respond to this? Or is there someone in our...
This is Vicki. I'd like
Oh,
to.
Vicki, you do want to respond? Okay.
Yeah. Our council certainly monitors the use of block grant funds and tries to keep a close sort of pulse on how things are going. But we also look at broader programs in substance abuse and behavioral health. And I would say that to the degree to which the council is kept up to date as changes are happening or new developments are happening is so dependent on the relationship with your state agency. And we've had times in the past when there was a very guarded and almost adversarial relationship, and we were kept out of the loop. But I think there's a culture now in Arizona where there's a real interest in engaging the council. They see our relationship as something that's beneficial to the state, as well as it's beneficial to the council and to the system in general. So people inform us when things are happening, and so that we can be involved. So I just want to emphasize how important that relationship is. It's a two-way street, though. It's not something you can do by yourself. There has to be a decision on the part of people in leadership that that's something they want to work on.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, I don't see any other hands right now. So here is another question. This is from Rochelle. What are some proactive ways you recruit and retain members so that recommendations can be equitable and robust? Do you include any kind of team building activities for existing members? Great question. Proactive ways you recruit and retain members. And how about team building activities? Ah,
I'd like to take a stab at it, Kathy.
go right ahead.
Thank you. One of the things that we encourage our members to do is to solicit membership, because you know the people personally and you know the work that we're engaged in, and hopefully you will select people that you feel would be optimal to the work that we're doing on the council. But when it comes to team building, we haven't done any team building in Michigan, but that's not to say that we won't, because we have a lot that we do want to do to help to improve our council overall. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Here's a question from Rochelle. How do you go about strategic planning for your group? Anybody out there want to share a story about how you do your strategic planning? Or do you have a step you do every year?
This is Jolene. I can jump in.
All right, Jolene.
Within the state, there is a coordinating council, behavioral health coordinating council, which brings together all of the state agencies that receive any kind of funding or involved with behavioral health. They work on a behavioral health strategic plan, and our behavioral health advisory committee is involved with that. And that strategic plan is usually a 5-year plan, and the Behavioral Health Advisory Committee has adopted that strategic plan as our strategic plan. And so we work on those priorities. Most recently, the state has been instructed to develop a specific children's mental health strategic plan. And so we will be involved in that process. So this helps us in coordinating with the many state agencies and really being able to address behavioral health statewide beyond the block grants. Again, this is an overarching ability to be able to address how these different agencies and how behavioral health is really kind of pieced together throughout the state.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I can jump in real quick. Iowa is just beginning the trying to form a strategic plan. We actually will be talking about it for the first time at our September meeting. We're looking to kind of do a cursory look at everything with regards to the Planning Council as we are looking at as we integrate the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services recently integrated in the last couple of years. And so this is our first year submitting the integrated block grant plan. So we are looking at how that will impact our planning council and how we want to go from there. We realize that it's more than just adding representation. It's more than just adding committee work, that it's going to be broader than that. So our first step will likely be forming a strategic plan steering committee that will kind of start forming action steps that the council can take and kind of push us further along. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We have another question. To all states with indigenous populations, does your state have a Native American council? Does Arizona want to take a stab at that? Or any of our other states?
So
No, I mean, there are, and Andrea could speak to this too. There are various groups that work with the Medicaid, our Medicaid agency, around funding for services. But in terms of the Planning Council, no, we don't have a separate Native American Planning Council. We actually have great difficulty getting representation from the various tribes. And that's, as I mentioned in my presentation, something we want to work on. So no, we don't.
This is Adriana Flores from Texas. So we do not have a Native American committee or council, but we do have a position designated for the federally recognized tribes in Texas. So it is an official position that they have. Within the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, there is a staff member who is a liaison to these tribes. So she helps us make that connection and talks with the tribes and gets them to talk together. We have 3 federally recognized tribes, so they alternate. Our members do have term limits. So the tribes decided the order in which their representative would be on the committee. And then we just reach out to them through the liaison whenever we need somebody to be on the committee for whichever tribe needs that representation. But we do have a formal position on them on the Behavioral Health Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Okay, here we have a question about advocacy. What are some suggestions if a House bill is being reviewed in the legislation and some council members do not agree with the House bill as it relates to their personal hats they wear? However, it sometimes rolls into the council business. We are presently working on a conflict of interest attestation. How does a council subcommittee have dialogue regarding House bills within an advocacy report? This is a complex one.
I'd like to take a stab at it. We don't have subcommittees. As I was reporting in Michigan, we want to develop them. So that's not an area that we would have the dialogue in. All of our dialogue takes place with the full council right now. But we are making steps to change that. And we do have a council member that does a legislative report at every meeting. So we do know what the current activity is of the legislature at any one given point in time. And if there's something that we don't agree with as a council, then we address a letter to the department to let them know that what our objections are and what we think should be done. And I'm sure Daryl can help to smooth out what I just said.
Well, I thank you, and we have reached our time limit for our discussions, but thank you so much for sharing your reflections, your knowledge, your experience. I will let you know that as a reminder, this has all been recorded, and the webinar and the PowerPoint slides are going to be available and sent to each of you. And unfortunately, we still have a couple questions in our question answer queue, but we need to move on to address the final points before closing. But all the remaining questions in queue will be recorded and answered and shared with attendees in a formal write-up at a later date. So thank you so much for the questions, for the collaborative discussions. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify some things here as we end. There are many different resources that we would like to share with you. First is the SAMHSA Guidance Manual for Behavioral Health. The Planning Council, this was released to the Planning Councils in April and can be accessed online. This resource covers a number of important aspects of Planning Council functions, and I will say it was a core resource for everything that we did in the Planning Council Collaborative. Our speakers use this resource, and every one of our 16 participants had a copy of this resource. Next. In addition to the currently available guidance manual that we just talked about, there are many other resources available. First, SAMHSA provides resources to the council online and also has a special site for leaks that are specific to the state TA project. We will put these links in the chat box for your convenience. Second, there is going to soon be a resource that reflects the content of this learning collaborative. The resource will include all the presentations from all the sessions, as well as other links and information. When it is released, the planning councils will be able to access it online at the above links. And lastly, individualized TA is available to planning councils, and we encourage you to contact the SAMHSA State TA project to get more information about this. So you are not alone. Next slide. Lastly, we would like you to click on the link in the chat to open up a survey. This is anonymous and will provide SAMHSA with really valuable information about your experience today. We thank you for what you do every single day for your state, for the people that you serve. Thank you so much. You are not alone. Thank you.